Good morning. Welcome to the meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee today, Tuesday, the 5th of July 2022 at 10 a.m. My name is Matthew Swindell and I'm the Cabinet and Committee Services Officer for the Vale of Glamorgan Council, and I'm supporting the meeting today, which is being recorded and live streamed on the Council's website. Before we move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is to appoint the chair for the meeting, I've got some housekeeping matters to make you aware of. Can I firstly ask all participants if they can confirm they've received and read the relevant papers for the meeting, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Can I also request that during the course of the meeting that all participants mute their microphones when they're not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback whilst other participants are speaking? If a participant does wish to speak, can you please raise your hand using the raise hand function in Teams or indicate on the screen to the chair that you wish to speak? If any participant has any difficulty in hearing or being heard, please can you advise either the chair or myself as the supporting officer. If anyone has experience of any technical issues or picture quality matters, in the first instance, I recommend you turning off your webcam. This can sometimes help with the broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth and ensure that all parties can be seen and or heard during the hearing. If any participant still has any difficulties with connections, please advise either the chair or myself as soon as possible. There is also a facility for anyone experiencing technical difficulties to dial into the meeting using a telephone, and the details of that were circulated with the meeting invitation. If for any reason any participant is unable to continue with the hearing can be adjourned for a short time in order for contact to be re-established, so as all parties can have access to the proceedings as a whole. The first item on the agenda is to nominate a chair. And as such, can I seek nominations from members sitting on the committee today to undertake that role, please?
I nominate Councillor Michael Morgan.
And I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much indeed. Congratulations, Councillor Morgan. So you're appointed to the role of chair for the purposes of the meeting, and I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Right, well, do we have the applicant present at this stage?
I don't believe we do, Chair. Let me just double check and see. No, the applicant isn't actually connected to the meeting at the moment.
Is it worth trying to call them to see whether they're trying to make contact, or do we proceed without them, or what should we do?
We can try and make contact. Are you happy to bear with us for a second, Chair, and I'll see if we can get them on the call.
We've got somebody wanting to come in.
Yeah, I think yeah, that may be the applicant's assistant. So that looks all right, councillors. I think we just need to. I think there was another party to attend.
I can do it. I can do it.
Hello, is that Mr. Birch?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Hi. We're just trying to get everybody into the meeting, Mr. Birch. If you could bear with us for a moment, and then we can do proper introductions. But our Democratic Services Officer is currently trying to contact another party.
Hello, Mrs. Pierce, Matthew from Democratic Services.
Hello, hi.
Hello, thank you for joining on the telephone. You're now connected to the meeting, and I'll hand over to the chair, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you.
Right, good. Well, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see everybody here. I think my first role is to introduce the subcommittee who will be deciding this matter this morning. So I'm Michael Morgan. I'm the chairman for today. With us, we also have Liz Burnett and Jane Norman, who are councillors. We have James Rankin, who's legal advisor this morning. Yvonne Witchell, who is the licensing officer for the Vale of Glamorgan. So we've got a full team of people here. I think the first step really then is for the licensing officer, Yvonne, to outline the application for us, introduce the report and update on any recent changes in the report. So perhaps I could invite Yvonne to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning, everyone. The purpose of the subcommittee hearing today is to consider an application made under the Licensing Act 2003 for the grant of a premises licence at Fredwell Cafe, Pantwilkin Stables, submitted by Mr Christopher Birch of Fredwell Cafe and Patisserie Limited. There is an agenda pack which has been circulated to all parties via a link, and that outlines the purpose of the meeting, the background so far, and the application that is to be determined today. So briefly, on the 10th of May 2022, the Licensing Authority received an application for the grant of a premises licence, and a copy of the relevant parts of the application form are attached as Appendix A to the report. And the application seeks authorisation for the licensable activity of the sale by retail of alcohol on the premises. We go on to explain that within the application was a request for permission to provide live and recorded music as part of the application. However, under the Deregulation Act 2015, between the hours of 8 AM and 11 PM, these activities are not licensable on premises licensed to sell alcohol. And likewise, within the application, the request for the provision of late night refreshment is superfluous, as late night refreshment is only a licensable activity between the hours of 11 PM and 5 AM. The application originally included an operating schedule which sets out the steps the applicant proposes to take to promote the licensing objectives, and this is set out in box M of the application form at Appendix A. The authority is required to check that the application has been advertised in accordance with the regulations, and on the 7th of June 2022, the Licensing Authority was notified that a number of additional conditions had been proposed by South Wales Police in relation to the application, and that the applicant had agreed to the inclusion of these conditions in the operating schedule. And a copy of those agreed and proposed conditions is attached at Appendix B to the report. There are some technical issues in respect of the application which will need to be addressed and considered as part of this hearing. And within the South Wales Police letter, there was reference to an external seating area at the premises. However, the application and the application plan do not make provision for an external seating area to be included in the premises licence. And furthermore, the application itself is only for on sales, e.g. for the sale of alcohol for consumption within the premises. And the extent of the premises as applied for is outlined in green on the plan attached as Appendix C to the report. And there is no reference to an outside seating area within the application itself. And we go on to explain, therefore, that an outdoor space which is not covered by the premises licence is an off sale. But the applicant did not request both on and off sales. And there are some this additional information in relation to the impact of this. There is a temporary provision to assist businesses following the COVID pandemic, but that's a temporary provision to allow off sales to be made into spaces not covered by the premises licence. However, this temporary relaxation is currently set to end on the 30th of September 2022. As I have outlined, it's part of the Licensing Act process that an application is advertised in accordance with the regulations, and the period for making representations ended on the 7th of June 2022. During the consultation period, 2 representations were received from other persons, and the relevant representations within the emails received are attached to your report as Appendix D. and the definition of relevant representations is set out in the report. The two parties received notices of hearing. One of the parties, a Dr. and Mrs. Pugh, said that they wished to attend the hearing today to further expand on their representations. And the two representations at Appendix D reflect what has been received, and neither of the parties have withdrawn those representations, and therefore a full hearing of this application is required. I can confirm we haven't received any further written submissions from either the applicant or the persons making representations, and members, therefore that at the current stage is the application before you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Are you done?
Yes, Chair, I have nothing further to add at the present time.
Well, thank you very much for that. Now, perhaps next, I believe I call upon Mr. Birch just to outline his application and the background to the application. So if you could address us now, Mr. Birch, we'll listen to you carefully.
Good morning. Yes, thank you. We have a coffee shop, cafe and patisserie at Pantwilkin Stables, and it's been quite a success. We're very, very pleased with it, despite everything going on in the world at the moment, which is fantastic. We've had a lot of people who have since coming in asked us, would we like to do further meals and possibly do small catered events. And there's a growing market for the cafe and patisserie to sort of diversify slightly into providing Sunday lunches and those sorts of things. And so we would like to offer a glass of wine or a bottle of beer to accompany a Sunday lunch or a Friday evening meal or something like that. And that's basically the premise of asking for the license. It's not something that would be sold solely on its own. It will be sold in conjunction with a meal, and it's relative in proportion. I mean, I don't know if you visited the premises, but it's not somewhere to come and get drunk. Certainly not. It's a space that is mostly coffee and cake, but we have a lot of people coming for like hen parties and things like that who start their afternoon here with an afternoon tea. And sometimes it would be nice for them to have a bottle of champagne with it, but we obviously can't retail that at the moment, and they can't consume that on site. And we'd like to add that as a possibility for them, just to further add to the service that we can offer here. In terms of live music and events, it's a very broad spectrum. I do appreciate that, but when we applied for the license, it was because I know a harpist incredibly well, and she is obviously deemed as live music. So I would like to invite her here, possibly every once a month on a Saturday evening, and it'd be a part of an event. And I would also like to occasionally have a small orchestral band here, 4-piece or something, like a cellist, a harpist. It fits in with the mood and the ambience of the area. It's not something that we'll have drum and bass or anything sort of ridiculous like that. It's not that type of environment. It's not that type of business, and it fits very well in with the infrastructure that we have here and the aesthetic of here. It's a small cafe, and we just like to have someone in the corner occasionally. Cellist, harpist, someone like that. I know quite a few people like that, so that's what I would ideally like. In terms of the outside seating area, the reason that wasn't included is because we for the impact on the local area, we wouldn't allow anyone going outside with alcohol. That's the full reason for that. Anyone with a glass of wine or a bottle of beer or anything like that would be contained to the inside of the premises for their safety as well as for everybody in the area. That was a deliberate action for us. In terms of sound as well, we have, since we had the objections, we have bought a device to measure the sound levels and the ambient sound in the premises. From the outside, you can't tell any different. It's just normal farm traffic and farm sounds. There's no bleed out of sound from the inside of the premises at the moment, and we would keep a very close monitor on that as well. I mean, the whole point of this is to add to the area and to become part of the area. I do appreciate, looking at the objections, that there are a few people who object to sort of a raucous noise or add into a raucous noise or behaviour. We are in very close proximity. We're at the other end of the road from the Hare and Hounds and the Farmers Arms, two of our local pubs. We're, I think it's 400 metres away, walking distance. So we are at the other end of the road that has two pubs. They've been there since, well, for a long time, mostly before everybody is alive. So I would like to think that people are used to people drinking in the area, and I think that they take a very respectful tone anyway, and we would add to that. So I hope that covers everything, but I'm open to anyone asking any questions, obviously.
I'll unmute myself. Thank you. So if I could perhaps, in the first instance, ask my co-councillors whether they have any questions for you. I don't know who'd like to go first, Jane or Liz?
Good morning. Just to ask, you did say that you wouldn't be selling alcohol without refreshments, without food. That is definite. People wouldn't come to you just, yeah.
That's right. Yes. No. The mood and the aesthetic we're creating here is that people come for coffee and cake or for a main meal with something. It would be an accompaniment with the food, not sold individually, and I would make sure of that. Partly because our margins wouldn't allow for it here, but mostly because that's the mood I want to create here. Is you have a glass of wine or a bottle of beer with your food. And because we're mostly a destination place anyway, you would mostly need to drive here or be dropped off here. So it's very unlikely you're going to get drunk here. Essentially, you'd probably go to the Farmers Arms or the Hare and Hounds if you wanted to do that.
And what about the sale of spirits? You
so
say
my
you say you're going to sell wine or beer. What about
so my idea here is to have it. Oh, I'm very sorry. I didn't quite catch that.
I was saying, you're saying you're going to sell wine and beer. What about spirits? You know, gin, vodka, etc., etc.
The only thing that we would plan on doing at the moment, it would be mostly wine and beer. The only other thing we would possibly do at the moment is an espresso martini. And that's purely because we're a coffee shop as well, and I think it would fit in very well. But mostly it would be wine and beer. The beer would come from a local microbrewery that's in Treforest, and the wine would come from a vineyard that we've got shares in Loire Valley in France.
Thank you.
No problem at all.
Is it possible for me to voice an objection?
Yeah, if you, I'll invite you to speak in a moment, Mrs. Pugh. First of all, right. I'll call upon Councillor Burnett to see if she has any questions. Then I'll ask you if you have any questions.
Thank you, Chair. In some ways, it's mostly been answered. I suppose I had a quick. I actually, coincidentally, without knowing that this was coming forward, actually was at the premises when we were escorting our twinning association around recently, and I suppose the first question I had was about the outside area, because it's a comfortable area, and I take your view about noise reduction. So I think that that's a very valid question. I suppose the only other thing is in driving down towards it, there appear to be a number of sort of holiday chalet type premises. I've assumed, I don't actually know if they are, but would you envisage providing sort of evening meals, etc., for people that are staying there? Would that be part of your customer base?
Yes, that's right. Yes, so the majority of the reason to build the cafe initially was because of the holiday homes that are on site here, and we do at the moment direct everybody down through the stables, down Llangwine Road, down to the Hare and Hounds and the Farmers Arms for evening meals and for drinks anyway, and they tend to walk back. So this opening here, we would bring that traffic from those 8 holiday homes to Fredwell instead. So if anything, I suppose it would lessen the foot traffic of people having a drink, walking up and down Llangwine Road, because they would come here for a meal instead. But yes, that would predominantly be our customer base. Yes, sorry, yeah, to answer your question.
Okay, that's the only question from me.
Right, and just finally from me, just a couple of points which Liz just touched on. You're not an isolated business there, are you? There are other businesses set up around the stables. What is there altogether?
Across the street from me, there's a vet, an equine vet, and there's a few warehousing units there. And at the very end, there's like a horse rug wash, and then behind us there's a 3D printing company, and a few landscape gardeners store things there and bits and pieces like that. So there's those just behind me here, but most of those are Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 sort of businesses, with vets and things like that. So we wouldn't be catering to those in the evening if to answer that, if that helps.
And to date, have you had any complaints about the way you conduct the premises?
No. Everybody's been very, very happy with us so far. Everybody seems to be fairly sort of. We've not had it. The most objections or the most complaints we get is trying to find us, if I'm totally honest with you, because the sat nav brings you down Llangwine Road, despite every effort to do differently. But when they get to us, they're very pleasant customers. Everybody's had good feedback, and we hope to continue that way anyway. Well, we had, as Liz suggested, we also had the twinning weekend here recently too. So hopefully we're sort of adding to the community as well.
Thank you. Right, now the other interested party present is Mrs. Pugh, who wishes to raise an objection. So at this stage, Mrs. Pugh, I'd just like you to ask any questions of the applicant that you feel relevant, and then a little later I'll ask you to set out your objection in full. But at this stage, if I could invite you to raise any questions you have.
Could I ask, I'm sorry, I don't know Chris's surname. I have spoken to Chris before, and he's always been very helpful and obliging to me. I live at Pantwilkin Farm, and originally the whole area that Chris deals with was part of this farm. And then it was split up and sold to Mr. Vaughan as a racing yard. And then Mr. Vaughan moved his horses and expanded his racing yard, his previous racing yard, to accommodate lots of different businesses. As Chris has explained, there are many businesses there now.
If you could ask questions at this stage, I'll ask you to set
okay.
Any questions?
And the noise in that yard has increased and increased. We are an elderly couple who bought this house 24 years ago, hoping we had come to a country area. The noise that is in that area now has increased. I don't object to normal daily noise. You can't do, because it's a farming area. But the thought of alcohol being sold on those premises at any time is bound to increase the flow of customers, which is what Chris wants, and the fact that we will be subject to more noise. Our premises is probably 50 yards away from his cafe, and I just shudder at the thought of hen parties and the noise that they might generate. And you're not going to tell me that he's going to police the noise to the extent that he will subdue customers who have come out for a good time. So I just object to the possible increase of noise, especially as he suggested having music on the premises as well. I don't think he will contain it within his cafe area, although he has said that is what he wants to do. His cafe is quite small, and I think they will overflow into the yard and there will be a lot of noise.
Do you have a question, please?
A question? Well, will he why does he want the license? He wants the license so that he can increase his business, and consequently, how much control will he have over his customers?
I can help answer that if that's helpful. So with regards to the customers, we will most definitely be keeping them inside, and the food will, alcohol will only be given to a customer who's already ordered food, because that's the way our till system will be set up. So you order food, then you order a drink. If you don't order food, then you won't be able to click into the screen from a technical basis to give you an alcohol sale. That's one of the conditions that I agreed to with the South Wales Police. And I also agreed to having external CCTV on the building to further police that no alcohol will be consumed outside. Now, when it comes to the inside of the premises, I think when I measured it on Google Maps, I think we're 180 yards away from the nearest window of Barbara's house. At the moment, we do have very mellow, I don't know if you can hear it in the background actually, very mellow, low music in the background now at the moment. And that doesn't seem to impact on anything outside. I think the majority of the noise that perhaps Barbara is noticing is mostly down to the general farm noise and the general farm traffic, or the noise from the other businesses, because the majority, we are one of the furthest away from Barbara and John's home, and I don't think I will police it in any way that is suggested to me, but I think I can safely say that it'll be food accompanied with alcohol, and because we're a destination place, I don't think we're going to have many people getting very drunk here or anything like that, because it's you would have to drive here mostly. It's not that.
And you'll have a driver and a car full of people who will get drunk.
I mean that is always.
I know, Chris, that's not what you want. You want to keep a high-end premises because your prices are really quite prohibitive. But I don't think it will happen. Once the word gets round, everybody will come and have a look at you anyway, which is what has happened in the past.
Well, I don't know if I can further answer that question, so I think I'll probably have to leave that there.
Well, obviously, Chris wants to expand. He's a businessman, and I congratulate his achievement so far, but I don't want his further achievement to be at the expense of my health.
Chairman, I wonder if I could interrupt at this stage. Mrs. Pugh obviously will have the chance to put her objection in full when that time arises, but at the moment, this is still just the opportunity for Mrs. Pugh to ask questions, and questions only.
Questions, right. Will you, if you have a group, will you limit the size of the group?
It would be difficult to limit the size of a group, but if it were a condition, I would be obviously happy to meet that. At the moment, I mean, a traditional car, I suppose you're looking at 5 people. A hen party, I mean, we had a hen party here very recently, and very unaware of us. They obviously didn't drink it, but they did bring a bottle of champagne with them, thinking they could drink it, but they didn't. They were here for, there were 25 of them. They were here for a total of 3 hours. We had no noise complaints for that time, and we have several other events. We had a 50th birthday party here and a 30th birthday party here. That was I think there were 80 people in this room and 70 people the following weekend, and we had no noise complaint there. And obviously we had the twinning ceremony here, and I believe that was 18 people, and they were all sat outside, and we had no complaint there either. So I would imagine that limiting the number of people would not necessarily equate to less noise or more noise, but I do think that us being carefully monitoring it would probably be the best answer. And I think we have very diligent staff. We have a good team. We're a small family business. It's in our interest to make sure that we get on with our neighbours.
I do appreciate that he is saying that he has had various parties, and I do have to admit that I haven't noticed any excess noise, but I suspect that alcohol will fuel noise. I was born and brought up in London, and I
Mrs. Pugh, if we could just, because
yes, and I'm just stating a fact here that I know that alcohol fuels noise.
We have a little procedure to follow, you see, and so.
Yes, well, I haven't been given the notes on the procedure, and I'm used to speaking my mind, and I just am very worked up about the prospect of alcohol being sold down there. It's the thin end of the wedge.
You'll have opportunity in a minute to go into great detail, as much detail as you want. But this stage is just for you to ask questions. So if you have no further questions, we can move on, and then you'll have the opportunity to say your piece in full for as long as you like.
All right, okay. Yeah, okay. I'll be quiet until I'm invited to speak again.
That's right. No, you're still very much involved. Don't worry. So. There's no one else to raise a question, I understand. There are no responsible authorities involved at this stage. I understand that the police have raised no objections to this application. And so we will move on to invite interested parties to speak. And this is your turn, Mrs. Pugh. You can now state your case, give all the background to your thing. And this is your opportunity, and then when you have finished, there'll be opportunity for the councillors and for the applicant to ask questions of you. So off you go.
I'm so sorry. Forgive me, Mrs. Pugh and Councillor Morgan. I just wanted to ask some supplementary questions which arise out of something that has been said by the applicant. You have a till system which only permits the sale of alcohol ancillary to food. So I, as a customer, have to order food in order to get alcohol.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
So the conditions that you've agreed with the police, which are contained at Appendix B and in a letter dated the 6th of June, seem to suggest that there would be a relaxation for what I'm going to call the restaurant condition when you were having a private party. In other words, it seems to be that what you're suggesting is that if you have a private party which is pre-booked, they wouldn't have to have food in order for them to have alcohol. Is that right?
No, sir. They would have to, in order to function, we would have to sell food as well. So if, for instance, we had a private function, it would be they would have to order food, even if it was a buffet style meal, and that buffet would have to be served, and then they would be able to consume alcohol. It would have to be as one complete order. Because the way we've set this business out is that they can hire the room completely free of charge, as long as they order a certain number of meals. So in order to use the room as a function space, they would have to purchase food.
I understand. So that part of the agreement with the police in respect of their condition 7 can be amended, because yes, as it reads, it's alcohol will only be sold to those customers that have purchased food to be consumed on the premises, save for occasions when the premises is hired out for a private function. So I can remove those words, can I?
Yes, sir. Yes, we will be serving 100%. We will be serving food with any function.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor. That's all I wanted to do.
Thank you, James. assuming there are no further questions, may I now pass the meeting to Mrs. Pugh?
Me, is it?
It is, yes.
Yeah. I'm just very unhappy about the prospect of the increase in clientele at this cafe, because it started very small and Chris has been very successful. But the thought that there will be music and the sale of alcohol fills me with apprehension, because I know he says it's 180 meters from the window. I do go outside sometimes. I am still mobile enough to sit in my garden on occasion when the noise that is generated by Mr. Vaughan and his various activities allows me to go outside. But the thought of music and alcohol consuming clientele fills me with horror. Because when I moved here, I didn't move next to a pub. I didn't move next to an agricultural. I moved into an agricultural area. I didn't move next to a mini industrial estate, which is what Mr. Vaughan has on his premises now. And it seems to me that very little planning application goes in before the premises are altered, and then the retrospective planning just goes through without any consideration at all. Because, as Mr. Vaughan told me years ago, he has friends in planning. And I just feel that I am being totally disregarded in my old age because I don't count anymore. And, you know, she's just a little old lady. She lives there. She'll be dead soon. We can do what we like. And that is really how I feel and how I've been made to feel over the last 14 years, 15 years since Mr. Vaughan has been there. And now the prospect of Chris having an alcohol license, which will obviously improve his business, and how well will it be monitored? How well will it be monitored? I just think that it's the thin end of the wedge, and once it starts, there'll be no stopping it. I think that's all I have to say. Of course, I sound emotional. Of course,
I'd like to put an objection in here, please. We are not a planning committee. This should not be relevant.
But you should consider the effect it will have on the people around the premises. You may not be a planning committee, but you should appreciate that people who live near where a license is granted are going to be subject to more noise and disruption in their lives. How would you like it next to your home? Just think about that, madam, whatever you are.
I don't think that was called for, but we're not a planning committee, so
you're attacking me. You're attacking me with your knowledge, and I am saying it's just simple consideration for other human beings, and that seems to be lacking an awful lot in everything nowadays. Everything. And I feel sorry for the up-and-coming generations, for the lack of respect they show the elderly and anybody who opposes anything they want to do.
I wonder if I might just intervene at this stage, Mrs. Pugh.
Yeah.
I'm the legal advisor. My name is James Rankin.
Hello.
I just wanted to remind you that if the license is granted today, it's not granted forever. You are able, if noise emanates from the premises, if you're disturbed, if people behave badly, if there are fights, all those things, you're able to review the license. You just put in an application for review and it comes back before the committee and you're able to say, well, look, I told you so. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware of that. But how long would that process take?
It takes 28 days from you putting in the application to review, and then the committee has to hear it within 28 days after that. So it takes 2 months maximum.
Right. I'm 78 years old. I am not in good health. I have had a lot of spinal operations and hip operations. I just would like to have a peaceful old age and retire from my life gracefully instead of having my life disrupted by other people's selfishness. That's all I've got to say. It seems the little man gets ridden over now because his voice isn't listened to. It's heard, I'm allowed to speak, but will it be listened to?
Thank you, Mrs. Pugh. Please be assured everybody gets a fair hearing at these committees. That's why these committee meetings take place, so that everybody has opportunity to have their say.
Well, thank you for listening to my rant. I'm sorry I've ranted, but then I've lived with it for 14 years.
But now we move on. The councillors and the applicant and James indeed will have opportunity to ask you questions about what you've said. So right. I will ask the councillors first. Councillor Norman, do you have any questions for Mrs. Pugh?
No, I think Mrs. Pugh has made her feelings quite well known, and as I must remind again, this is not a planning matter, this is a licensing matter, and us as a licensing committee are not responsible for what's been going on in the past 14 years. I understand it's very frustrating, but Mrs. Pugh must realise we do have guidelines which we have to follow. And apart from that, no, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Burnett, do you have any question?
No, there's no questions from me.
James, any questions from you?
I have no questions, Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Birch, do you have any questions for Mrs. Pugh?
I would only ask Ms. Pugh to understand, or I suppose it's a question and an answer in one, but to perhaps appreciate that I do very much appreciate that the conditions that Ms. Pugh raised, most definitely, but to appreciate that I am not Tim Vaughan. I don't own this land and I haven't developed it. I am a leaseholder, and I'm just trying to do the best for my business, and that is the only thing that is more of a statement than a question. So I do apologise, but on a general level, Barbara, you have my telephone number. If there's ever any problems or anything like that, you're always welcome to contact me. It's always been the case. It always will be the case. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, well, I have no questions either, so we can move on. The next step will be for everybody to sum up. And so if Mrs. Pugh wishes, she has opportunity to sum up anything that she said so far, or she can let what she has already said stand as her objection. Is there anything further?
I would like to say that people are welcome to come here and see the proximity of Chris's cafe to our premises. He says 180 metres. I don't believe that. And I'd just like to say that how would you like it in your backyard? How would you like it in your backyard? I'm sure if you were to buy a house, you would see whether there were licensed premises within so many metres of your new home, because it does generate noise, however well it's managed. That's all I want to say, is for people to put themselves in my position and to say whether they would condone it or not.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pugh. And now I would give Mr. Birch opportunity to make any summary or closing remarks, having listened to everything that has been said so far.
Thank you. I have nothing particular to add, but if there are any further conditions that need to be imposed that would make this more appealing to the surrounding neighbours, then most definitely I would look to comply with that, most definitely. And my apologies, I didn't say if I said 180 metres, I meant 180 yards. Sorry, just to clarify that. But thank you very much.
3 inches times 180. A metre is 3 inches more than a yard. Right, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Blue. So now this is a stage where we just ask for final clarification of any points. And I wonder whether I could ask James to come in at this stage to comment on the application and to give some guidance as to the conditions the applicant has sought and whether those are going to need to be adjusted in any event.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So I'm going by the Appendix B, which is the letter from the police dated the 6th of June 2022. And it contains a list of 7 conditions. The first one relates to CCTV. The second one relates to a Challenge 25 policy. Now, in your application, you put, Mr. Birch, that you would only sell alcohol to persons over the age of 25. The more usual condition in these circumstances is the Challenge 25 condition. In other words, you can sell to people over the age of 18, but if they look under 25, you have to challenge them, and you're content with that.
Yes, sir. Yes, I am.
You also put in your application that you would limit the sale of drinks, the number of drinks, to persons to 3. In practice, that may be an unworkable condition for you.
Our system would allow for 3. We can certainly adopt that if that was a requirement. We did apply for it in that respect. So I would be happy to comply with that. Our till system does allow for that. We do a 3 drink limit.
But would you be selling bottles of wine?
No, well, yes, sorry, yes, we would sell bottles of wine.
But how do you limit then the number of drinks that somebody has from that bottle? You see the point that in practice it's difficult to comply with. It may be.
Yes.
It may be that a more sensible condition, if you're prepared to agree to it, and it seems that you are, is that alcohol would be restricted solely to those persons consuming a table meal, and that would include persons attending a private function. So you're happy with that?
Yes, I would agree with that, yes, sir, yes.
Incident records, training for staff, at least 50% of the licensed area will be laid with tables and chairs, and you're happy with that?
That's right, sir. Yes, it's 100% table. There's no room to move them.
And so you'd be happy for that to be 100% of the licensed area being laid to tables and chairs?
I would prefer leaving it the way it was, but if you were more comfortable with it being 100%, then yes. The only reason I said I was happy with 50% is because if someone wanted to reconfigure the table so there was some at one end of the room and not at the other end of the room, just so that there's more room to walk around. For instance, we had a wake here recently where more people were stood rather than sat. So we moved the.
I understand.
You know, that's
50%. A requirement from the police that when alcohol is being sold, that either the designated premises supervisor, the DPS, or a personal license holder will be present during the duration of the event. And you're happy for that as a condition?
That's right, yes, sir. It would be myself, my business partner, or the manager here. We will, or one of the 3 of us, or a combination of us would be here throughout the entire time that alcohol is served.
Did you understand the outline that was given at the beginning of the application by Yvonne Witchell? The impact of the Deregulation Act. Did you appreciate that? You're entitled to have live music and you're entitled to have recorded music.
Yes, so yeah, we do have low-level recorded music at the moment, but I wanted to be very specific. And when I put the application in, I wanted to make sure that if we did decide to put a harpist, a cellist, someone in here, I wanted to make sure that we could still, you know, that everybody was very happy with that, and we were very public about applying for that and making sure everybody was aware of it.
The point is this, that you don't need to apply for that. You're allowed to do it by operation of law in any event.
Oh,
So,
and then that's
do I take it that live music and recorded music, insofar as this application is concerned, are removed as part of your application? Because you're allowed to do them anyway.
that's fine then. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Right. And can you also confirm that that is also the case in respect of late night refreshment? You're allowed to sell hot food and hot drinks as a matter of law up until 11 o'clock anyway.
Yes, yes, we do go through that at the moment.
So can I take it then that you, insofar as your late night refreshment application is concerned, that's withdrawn as well, because you're allowed to do it anyway?
Yes, that would be fine then. I wanted to be belt and braces with everything.
That's all I wanted to ask, Chair. You're on mute.
Right, here I am. Right. Thank you very much, James, for that. That's very helpful. I think, are there any other clarification points required from anybody? And that includes you, Mrs. Pugh, if there's any point of clarification you want to raise? No?
I just would like, if possible, I'd like to extend an invitation to Chris to visit me at my house, just to see how close I am to him, and to appreciate that I can't sit out and listen to other people's choice of music of a summer evening. Just ask him if he will visit me. Will you visit me, Chris?
Yes, of course. I brought you a post last week. I spoke to John. You were in bed, I think.
Yes, because I am unwell. I am 78 years old, have had 2 hip replacements in the last 2 years, have had spinal fusions, and it's a wonder I'm crawling about, so maybe you won't have to wait that long.
Right, thank you, Mr.
See how you add to my mental health, though. You must see what you're doing to my mental health here. It's quite cruel, really, isn't it, when you think about it?
Right. Any other points before the committee retire to make a decision? No. So I think that those in control of this meeting will now remove those who are not going to make the decision, and then we'll call you back in when we've made a decision.
I know what the decision will be. I know. Thank you anyway for including me. I'm sorry I've been a bit out of control, but then I have very little to fear at my age.
I hope you feel you've had a fair hearing. That's what's important.
Well, I think you've given me a fair hearing. I'm not so sure about everybody else.
I think we've all endeavoured to do so. So
I know you have. I know you have. And I'm sure if my husband had been here, it would have been a far more rational and controlled discussion on his part, on our part. It's just that I'm just a little bit fed up with it all.
Anyway, right, well, there we are. We're going to retire, and then we'll call everybody back when we've made a decision. So
all I'm saying is to you now is to consider, if you were in my position, whether you'd want.
We will be considering your position.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you shortly.
All right then. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Barbara Pugh
is now exiting.
Thank you, Chair. We'll stop the recording. We'll pause the live stream. Bear us for 1 second. I'll just confirm when that's taken place.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The meeting has now recommenced if you'd like to continue. Thank you very much.
Right, so is everybody back on and can you hear me? So, whoops, excuse me. Right, so for both Mr. Birch and Mrs. Pugh, we have listened carefully to everything that has been said, both by Mr. Birch and by Mrs. Pugh, and we're sympathetic to the issues that Mrs. Pugh has raised. However, we do take a number of observations here. We note that the application itself is modest. It's only requiring service until 12:30 at night. That the applicant has agreed to a raft of conditions to protect the environment, and also he's agreed that alcoholic drink will only be supplied for table service and will only be and that includes also private functions. That he has no intention to use the outside area for the supply or sale of liquor, and then he's agreed to these conditions, as we say, save those that may be mentioned in our final report. I'll explain about that a little later. And it's encouraging to hear that he does have a friendly relationship with Mrs. Pugh, and we hope that that will continue and that he will listen to her in the future if she does have any issues, so that if necessary, adjustments can be made. I think that kind of dialogue is a good thing. We're also conscious that there have been no objections from the statutory authorities, from the fire service or the police, and so we accept that. A final decision, detailed decision, will be issued within 5 days. This will set out the conditions that are applicable and to which Mr. Birch will agree. After that, if Mrs. Pugh wishes to appeal, she may do so. She has a period of 21 days after that decision is issued to appeal the decision. But also, importantly, if there are issues in the future and Mrs. Pugh takes the view, or indeed any other neighbours take the view, this isn't working, there's too much noise and disturbance, they can apply for this decision to be reviewed. So, you know, that we are a licensing authority. We care about everybody, and if there are issues in the future, those can be looked at. But we hope that things will continue in a fair and reasonable way, and there will not be disturbance to Mrs. Pugh from the restaurant in the future. So in principle then, this application is granted, but a detailed decision will be sent out in the next 5 days. So that's that. Any queries on that? So I think we're done. So I say thank you very much for coming. It's very nice to see Mr. Birch, very nice to hear from Mrs. Pugh, and thank you to the members of the committee and to James Rankin for his very learned advice this morning, which has helped us reach our decision. So I think we are done.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to,
Thank
you need to add anything, James, on?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. I wonder if we could say 5 working days for the decision.
Oh, right, indeed, 5 working days. I work every day, so that's the.
Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you all.